Hey everybody, what is going on? I am Maximus Rex and this is Big Baby Reviews. Today is Eric Larsen Day. It is Saturday. Hope you're having a great weekend. Just going to remind you before we get into this issue that we are on the road to 250 subs here at Big Baby Reviews. So if you are viewing and enjoying these videos and have not yet subscribed, please, I would appreciate it if you did. Hit the subscribe button below. It helps us out, helps get the channel out there to other people who have maybe the same interests, and helps motivate us, obviously, to keep the content up and throw out some more stuff out there that you might enjoy. So thank you for that if you do. And without further ado, we're going to talk about the Savage Dragon issue number 1 from the miniseries, the first brutal issue from Image Comics. Got to admit, in and around this time when I discovered Image Comics, I may have talked about it before in other videos, but basically Spawn number 2 was my first Image comic. I didn't know anything about Image Comics until someone mentioned it to me that the guys from Marvel were moving over there, and I actually at that time, you know, discovered, I'm not quite sure how, either a friend told me or I looked in the Yellow Pages, which was a big book you used to look into back in the day to find out, for example, you know, you'd go to the section that said comic books, if there was a comic book store in your city, and it would tell you where these comic book stores were. So I found out somehow that there was a comic book store literally less than a 10-minute walk away from where I lived at that point. I lived on a military base, and there was this kind of abandoned road that no cars would drive through, but you could walk through, that led to the kind of strip mall just outside the military base, and there was a comic book and sports cards store there, and that's where I first purchased Spawn number 2. It's also where I first got my first issue of Wizard with the Wildcats on the cover. I'm not sure if that's somewhere 11, 12, or 13, and that's what really got me into comics. Discovered Image Comics, discovered that two of my favorite artists that I knew about, Rob Liefeld and Jim Lee, had moved on to Image Comics. Again, discovered Todd McFarlane, and I was aware of Eric Larsen before and his work on Spider-Man. I wasn't for some reason a huge fan, but because he was creating something at Image Comics, at that point I was already pretty much sold on Image Comics. All the best artists were there, so I was willing to give it a chance. Glad I did, because Savage Dragon was one of the more enjoyable titles from early Image, right? Some of them were kind of lackluster in the story. You know, the art was strong, but the plot, almost non-existent. Savage Dragon, it felt like it was going somewhere. There were subplots, and the story was fun and interesting, had mystery, you know, subplots, etc., and just had a really exciting art as well, and great action, and a bit of gore, right, too. So a lot of the Image artists kind of took advantage of the fact that once they moved to Image, they weren't constrained under the comics code. So guys like Eric Larsen and Todd McFarlane, maybe more so than the others, but eventually even Rob Liefeld would kind of jump in there. Kind of went the road of making the comics a little more bloody and gory, which, you know, when you're 11, 12 years old, you think is super cool. At my age, I'd been raised on all these kind of canon movies from the 80s, you know, Predator, Commando with Arnold Schwarzenegger, all the Sylvester Stallone movies, you know, all those kind of action movies. So this is right up our lane at that point, right? Just a great fun comic with lots of action, and actually I grew to really appreciate Eric Larsen as an artist. His structure is really sound, his anatomy is really sound, and everything's always very exciting and dynamic. Great cover, I think, to start off a first issue. And if you don't know, Eric Larsen is the only guy to have started his title Image Comics who is still to this day writing and drawing it, so kudos to him. He's inching closer to issue 300, and can't wait to see when he gets there. So without further ado, let's have a look inside. Cover's dynamic. The first splash page is dynamic, and Larsen is using that old trick that I really like using as well. He's starting off every issue with a splash page and a double page splash, which is even cooler than the splash page, right? Or more exciting. Right away, you know you're not in a Marvel comic with all, you know, the amount of blood that you're seeing already here. And this one page splash, double page splash kind of combo is something Jack Kirby did a lot in the 70s. And that's some of my favorite Kirby. So I didn't know it at the time, but that's where Larsen was getting it. And, you know, 30 odd years later, in my own comics making process, I ripped that off as well. So right away, Larsen's still a master storyteller, still not skimping on the panels, right? But we're definitely getting a more, what I would call the Image vibe here, right? A lot more violence, a lot more emphasis on action, right? And we're not going to get so much kind of soap opera pages as you get in Marvel comics. There will be some, which is fine because you need that interpersonal stuff for you to care for the characters. But yeah, just just balls out action is what we're getting with Savage Dragon #1. That's why we enjoyed it. And again, as you'll see, there's a mystery involved as to who he is. And it was just something that grabs you right away. Erik Larsen, I think, is a master at grabbing you right away with some cool stuff that you do want to see, right? And eventually you start to feel for some of the characters and the dragon as you read the issues, right? Through the miniseries and into the regular series, which of course we will be looking at. This I thought was always cool here. Just that, menacing shot and the pause between the words, because I say so. It's easy to figure out how he's talking. Like I think it's a very clever way of laying out the lettering to get across how he's saying it. And at the point where I read this as a kid, I got it right away, right? I'd read a lot of comics, but I'd never really seen it used rhythmically that way. And I thought, always stuck with me. Thought it was clever. Again, lots of blood, right? And here's the mystery part before. Almost missed that when I read it originally, that we'd kind of gone back. So I was a bit confused and then eventually figured it out. Maybe it should have been bigger. So we find out that the dragon just, appears naked in the field and has no memory of who he is and why he was there. Again, not skimping on the storytelling here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 15 panels to a page, Not typical kind of image stuff. Still doing, not even a half splash here. Looks cool though. Always liked. I copied so many of the drawings in here as a kid. Eventually I'll be showing you some of those, and I could probably point out a few where I literally ripped off, this pose, or I can tell you from which issue I ripped it off, whether it's Savage Dragon or anything else. When you start drawing, you start copying most times, and man, was I into copying, all the image stuff. Got the use of the vertical panel, right? Still kept that up. But again, compared to his contemporaries, Larsen was still focusing a lot on the storytelling. We do have a more kind of pedestrian scene here, no action, more of the storytelling, the drama of it, right? The characters. So more so than you would see in like a Rob Liefeld book or a Jim Lee book. Even McFarlane, I think, was good at this as well. They were kind of the two top books, right? I'm not saying writing wise, I would say Savage Dragon was more fun and interesting than Spawn overall. Spawn was there for the art, but Larsen, I was there for the art and the story. I was somewhat invested in the Spawn story, but eventually it just seemed like, and I'll mention it when I do the Spawn reviews, it just seemed like a lot of it was very repetitious. Always liked Larsen's character designs. This is a good looking character here with the hair. He's mentioned before that he's meant to be kind of, I remember an interview, may have been on Kayfabe, that he's meant to have invisible skin. So he's still got skin, right? And of course, Dragon stood up to them, and that means that basically the guy who's helped him out is fucked. And it doesn't even take that much time. Where he's killed off. I assume they wanted to kill the dragon as well, just didn't know he was fireproof. Good old 90s vertical panel. Always found this lettering here kind of odd in a Erik Larsen comic. I don't know what happened here, but it just looks like typewriter lettering. Just again, I feel like that could have been done better. So there we go. Frank, if I'm not mistaken, finds out his brother, his Fred was his brother or his cousin, I'm not quite sure, but he's dead, and that's convinced Savage Dragon to join the police force, which is what our friend Frank wanted all along. We'll find out later in the story how that's going to affect Dragon and Frank as well. So this is kind of that sequence from the, Brian Bosworth shows up or something. He's probably the guy who would have played Erik Larsen, not Erik Larsen, excuse me, the Savage Dragon back in the day. I think I may have seen that in a Wizard casting call or something, but yeah, I could see that. So we got not quite a splash, but a cool looking shot of the dragon with lots of guns. Height of 90s excess here. Cool shot of him popping in. Always thought this guy looked like Wolverine. I don't know if that's on purpose or not. And then, Savage Dragon just mowing them all down. And I mean, he's a police officer, so I'm not quite sure how this works. I mean, it's basically more of a Punisher kind of feel here, I would say. Unless he's using rubber bullets for some reason. Sam Elliott shows up. I always thought he reminded me of Sam Elliott. Cool shot of him getting shot in the eye there. Exit wounds, right? Not allowed by the comics code. You're going to get lots of them here. Gotta wonder if this is a Dark Knight Returns thing. Or homage or swipe or whatever you want to call it, right? Because, you know, he's holding, in Dark Knight Returns, you got the mutant guy holding the baby. And he's like, I'll kill him, I'll kill him. And Batman shoots a bullet and he says, I believe you. But I feel like this is almost pretty much the same setup. So did Larsen get it from there? He is an avowed Frank Miller enthusiast, so possibly, maybe more of an homage. I wouldn't say a ripoff. But of course, Dragon doesn't shoot. This, originally I always thought he looked kind of like a disco character, like late 70s kind of superhero. And maybe that's what Larsen had envisioned, or maybe that's when he created him. But yeah, eventually he got rid of the hair, and I think it's a better look than what we've got here. But this pose here, copied it so many times, I remember. Still probably have some of those drawings where it's copied. Interesting use of screen tones here, right? Which we'll see less of, but Larsen was still using them here and there on Savage Dragon, and I always think it looks cool. Just gives it a more traditional kind of comic booky feel. You could almost believe like this is, you know, adjacent to the Marvel DC universe, or you know, something similar to it. It does have that vibe, just with a little bit more ultra violence. Cool character designs here. Cool looking shark dude. And that is the first issue of Savage Dragon. So, you know, I think Erik Larsen really established something pretty strong just with this first issue. You got a few characters that you're kind of slowly invested in. You've got lots of action, lots of gore. You know, at that age, anything a kid could really want to see in a comic book, you got, I think, with Savage Dragon. Maybe a little bit less so with Spawn, and even less so with all the other Image stuff, but definitely a standout was the Savage Dragon. So there you go, Savage Dragon #1. If you have any comments, questions, let me know in the comments. Feel free to comment on anything I've said here or answer any questions I may have asked out of the blue. Thank you so much for watching. Keep having a great weekend, and thank you for watching.
Like, subscribe, like, subscribe.
King Comics presents Big Baby, Volume 1, Issues 1 to 13, 204 pages of story and art. King Comics also presents Star Crasher one-shot, 32 pages, cosmic sci-fi surrealist adventure. You can find these fine comics at KingComics.CA, at MaximusRex13 on Instagram, or on Facebook, MaxRex or Big Baby.